You check your bank balance before bed and instantly feel like you're failing financially again. What would $10,000 actually change for you today, next decade, or retirement really? Everyone says save more, but nobody explains what specific sums do at different life stages. Here's the thing, 10,000 sounds small, but context makes it powerful or painfully useless. My name is Ryan, and I spend way too much time thinking about investing constantly. If you're someone who feels behind, overwhelmed, or unsure where to start, subscribe now, please. And give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. It really helps. Look, people assume 10,000 equals freedom or nothing, depending entirely on age and choices. Most advice is generic with sentence-long platitudes that don't explain practical trade-offs or opportunities clearly. Here's what people don't realize. 10,000's value depends on time horizon and intended use. This video will use clear math, psychology, and real examples so you can act confidently. We'll challenge common beliefs, show numbers, and give specific steps you can implement immediately today. Remember, this isn't financial theory. It's practical decisions that change decades of financial outcomes. Start by thinking of 10,000 as either seed, a safety net, or strategic boost. At 25, it's a compounding seed. At 35, emergency runway. At 55, retirement padding often. And math is simple. Time multiplies value. Small sums become meaningful with decades of returns. Now, you might think 10,000 is irrelevant when you're broke or earning minimum wage. That's fair, rooted in scarcity bias and brains focus on immediate needs over distant rewards. We undervalue future gains because our ancestors needed food now, not retirement accounts decades later. But context matters. What 10,000 can buy at 25 varies massively compared to 55. Here's what people don't realize. 10,000's value depends on time horizon and intended use. At 25, it buys experiments, equity stakes, and decades of compound growth if invested consistently. At 35, it often becomes emergency runway, mortgage down payments, or accelerating retirement contributions and investments. At 55, 10,000 is supplemental income, a buffer against volatility, or early retirement seed. Nearly 1 in 4 Americans report having no emergency savings, which makes 10,000 suddenly far more consequential for many households. Federal Reserve data shows median net worth rises sharply with age, so 10,000 impacts younger people differently. Consider this simple math. Invest 10,000 at age 25 for 40 years at 7% annual growth and genuinely life-changing. At 7% annual return, 10,000 invested for 40 years grows to about $149,745 without additional contributions. At 8% annualized, that same 10,000 roughly becomes $217,245 after 40 years, illustrating compound interest power. Now flip scenarios. If you're 35, 10,000 invested for 30 years grows substantially less, but still meaningful, especially when paired with steady contributions later. At 30 years with 7% average returns, 10,000 grows to about $76,123 and discipline combined. If you're 45 and have just 10,000, time horizon shrinks to 20 years, reducing compounding's effect dramatically, but strategic allocation still preserves outcomes. At 20 years and 7%, 10,000 becomes roughly $38,697 for debt reduction, investments, or travel. At 55, 10,000 invested for 10 years becomes about $20,000, which can supplement pension or cover emergencies. This math shows time dominates returns. Early compounding creates options later rather than immediate wealth this week and stops market timing pressure and fosters long-term discipline. Here's what most people don't realize. 10,000 can be a psychological catalyst, encouraging saving and enabling smarter financial choices together. Behaviorally, seeing 10,000 in the bank reduces loss aversion and gives courage to invest or negotiate salary and builds momentum for future decisions consistently. Now, you might be thinking 10,000 should be spent on immediate pleasure. That's understandable, but let's evaluate what it sacrifices for long-term optionality too. If you're 25, spending 10,000 on experiences has high utility. But investing yields optionality later and can be converted to financial freedom later too. If you're 35, $10,000 used for mortgage or childcare relief can compound indirectly by freeing income, boosting your ability to invest regularly later too. If you're 45, $10,000 can pay down high-interest debt immediately, often producing higher effective returns than market investments and improving monthly cash flow significantly. By 55, that same amount becomes a tactical buffer, reducing sequence of returns risk and improving retirement resilience, helping avoid selling during downturns and preserve income reliably. This is where it gets really interesting. $10,000 can be savings, investment capital, or strategic optionality if wisely allocated and not squandered impulsively. Here's what most people don't realize. The framing of $10,000 changes decisions, not just bank balances or net worth, and alters future finances dramatically. Let's discuss practical steps. Emergency fund priorities, debt decisions, investing, and balancing lifestyle with long-term planning, including dollar targets, and an immediate weekly action plan. Step 1. Secure a small emergency fund. Aim for 1 to 3 months essential expenses before large investments and prioritize basic stability immediately without overcomplicating things. Step 2. Pay down high-interest debt first. Mathematically, you often earn the interest rate you're avoiding, which often beats investments' guaranteed gains in many cases. Step 3. Consider investing $10,000 across diversified, low-cost index funds, tax-advantaged accounts, or balanced portfolios depending on time horizon taxes and personal risk tolerance. Step 4. Automate contributions, even small ones. Automaticity prevents behavioral mistakes and keeps compounding uninterrupted by removing temptation to tinker and sell during downturns impulsively. Behavioral Step 5. Celebrate small wins but avoid framing $10,000 as success end state. It's a tool, not destination. Future you gains from small habits. Here's the mistake I see constantly. People treat $10,000 as a finish line instead of leverage, which quietly stalls their financial growth for years. $10,000 isn't supposed to impress anyone. It's supposed to reduce stress, increase options, and buy you time when life gets unpredictable. Think of it like oxygen. You don't notice it when it's there, but everything falls apart when it's missing. At 25, $10,000 buys learning speed because mistakes are cheaper and recovery time is incredibly forgiving. You can invest aggressively, try side businesses, relocate for better opportunities, or simply survive a bad year without financial panic. This flexibility compounds psychologically because fear-driven decisions are some of the most expensive mistakes young people make. Now you might be thinking, I don't feel young or flexible. I feel stuck and behind already. That feeling usually comes from comparing your Chapter 1 to someone else's Chapter 20 on social media. But mathematically, if you're under 35, time is still your biggest unfair advantage by far. $10,000 at 35 shifts roles slightly because responsibilities increase and volatility tolerance naturally declines. Now it's less about wild upside and more about stability, protection, and accelerating systems already in motion. This is often when $10,000 becomes an emergency fund that prevents credit card debt spirals. Avoiding high-interest debt is a guaranteed return most people massively underestimate. A 20% credit card interest rate wipes out years of average market returns instantly. This is where it gets really interesting because preventing losses is often more powerful than chasing gains. At 45, $10,000 becomes about positioning, not growth alone. You're closer to retirement than the start of your career, which changes risk math dramatically. At this stage, $10,000 can smooth volatility, reduce leverage, or rebalance investments strategically. It can also fund professional upgrades, certifications, or relocations that increase late career earning power. People forget income growth still matters in your 40s, sometimes more than market returns. Now let's talk about 55, because this is where $10,000 feels deceptively underwhelming. You can't realistically turn it into millions, and that realization makes people dismiss it entirely. But here's what most people don't realize. $10,000 near retirement is about risk management, not growth. It can prevent forced selling during market downturns, which protects the rest of your portfolio. Sequence of returns risk destroys retirements more often than poor stock selection ever does. Having cash. Buffers reduces anxiety and improves decision-making during volatile years. Across all ages, the real value of $10,000 is what it prevents you from doing. It prevents panic, desperation, predatory debt, and rushed decisions that permanently damage finances. Psychologically, $10,000 creates a sense of control, and control changes behavior. People with even modest savings make better long-term decisions consistently, according to behavioral finance research. So what should you actually do right now if $10,000 is your current target? First, define its job clearly. Emergency fund, investment capital, debt reduction, or opportunity fund. Money without purpose gets spent. Money with purpose gets protected. Second, match the job to your age and life stage, not someone else's online advice. Third, automate whatever comes next, whether that's investing, saving, or debt repayment. Automation removes emotion, and emotion is usually the enemy of good financial outcomes. Fourth, stop waiting to feel ready. Clarity comes after action, not before. Most financial regret comes from inaction, not from imperfect but reasonable decisions. Look, $10,000 won't fix your life overnight, and it's not supposed to. It's a tool that quietly shifts probabilities in your favor over time. Used correctly, it reduces stress, increases flexibility, and accelerates whatever direction you're already moving. Used poorly, it disappears with nothing to show for it but temporary relief. The difference isn't intelligence, it's intention and patience. If this video helped reframe how you think about money at your age, that's the goal. Make sure to subscribe because we break down money in a way that respects real life. And hit the thumbs up if this stopped $10,000 from feeling pointless or overwhelming, because money only becomes powerful when you understand what it's actually for. $10,000 is never just a number, it's a turning point depending on how you use it. The earlier you give money a clear job, the less it controls your emotions. Start where you are, use what you have intentionally, and let time reward the discipline most people avoid.